It's okay. You guys hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. Good, 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 good. Okay, so what we're going to do today is I'm going to go over a little presentation. I'm hoping that everybody knows Zoom well enough that they're able to drop a message in the chat. So give me a 1, just put a number 1 in the chat, and that way I know you know how to send messages. Because if you have any questions, I'm going to want you to put those questions into the chat, okay? I'm going to try and make this as quick as possible. Sometimes I ramble. I know it's hard for some of you to understand, but sometimes I do ramble, and I'm going to try and make this as short as I possibly can, so that way I can make sure I answer any questions. So let me just pull up my little presentation here. All right. Okay. Meal prep and planning. Can give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Awesome. Okay, meal prep and planning. Let's get into it. And also, if you guys have any questions while I'm going through this prezo, I'm gonna do the presentation first. Drop any questions you have in the chat, and then I'll go back and I'll answer any questions that are going to be in the chat. Okay. So what we're going to cover today: structure. So without a schedule, you can't prep or plan. There's a great saying that I like that it goes, structure creates freedom. So to a certain point, the more structured you are, the more freedom you have, because you're literally giving yourself more time to have more freedom, right? So we're going to go over timing. There are 3 to 4 times that you must know if you want to be successful at prepping and planning. And typically, this is where when I'm talking to somebody and they're telling me they're having a hard time prepping and planning, I ask them 2 questions, and 99% of people that have a hard time prepping and planning, they will answer the same way for these 2 questions, and we're going to go over what those are. We're going to talk about strategies to prep and plan, and we're going to talk about some alternatives, and then whatever else I feel like rambling in that process. So to prep, you must plan. You cannot prep if you do not have a plan. All right. So without a plan, you can't prep. That plan should include 3 things. What time do you wake up? What time did you go to bed? I want you to think about those as bookends. So just like you would put a bunch of books on a shelf and you have something that's holding those books in place, bookends. Okay. Bedtime, wake time. You have to know those 2 things. If you do not know those 2 things, it becomes very difficult for you to prep and plan because you have no idea what time you're going to wake up or what time you're going to go to bed. You don't know when your day is going to start. You don't know when your day is going to end. It makes it very difficult to plan anything else in between. All right. So wake time, bedtime. When somebody tells me they have a hard time prepping and planning, the first question I ask them, what time they go to bed? And they will give me all sorts of different answers. And it will typically start with sometimes. Sometimes I go to bed at 10. Sometimes I go to bed at 8. Sometimes I go to bed at midnight. All right. I'll also ask them what time do they wake up? And I get the same thing. Sometimes 6, sometimes 8. All right. So you have to have set bedtimes and wake times. The third thing that you have to know is what time is your first meal coming in? If you don't know what time you're going to wake up, you're going to be pretty hard pressed to know what time your first meal is coming in. Now, you certainly could say, I'm going to eat an hour after I wake up. I'm going to eat a half an hour after I wake up. That's totally reasonable. But if Monday you wake up at 6 a.m. and Tuesday you wake up at 9 a.m., that 3 hours is actually could be an entire meal for you. So having set wake times, having set bedtimes, that's going to allow you to establish what time your first meal is going to come in. And if you are working out, you should know what time you're working out. So sometimes for prepping and planning, people are telling me like, oh man, I have a really hard time prepping and planning. And I go, okay, what time do you wake up? What time do you go to bed? And they tell me, man, every day I wake up at 6 a.m. and every night I go to bed by 10. Great. My next question to them when they're having a hard time prepping and planning is, what time is your first meal? And they'll typically say, well, I don't know my first meal is. Whenever I eat it. That is not the right answer. You know when you can have your first meal. Tomorrow, I know when I can have my first meal. All right. Now, the workout piece is really important. A lot of people will not have any idea what they're going to be eating for that day, but they get their workout done. If your goal is weight loss, I would much rather you take the hour that you were going to work out and prep your meals for the next 2 days. If the goal is to lose weight, don't worry about the workout. If you don't know what you're going to eat for the next 2 days, take that 1 hour of working out, prep and plan for the next 2 days so that you know exactly what you're going to be eating for the next 48 hours, right? So I would even go so far as to say, if you don't know what you're going to be eating for the next 2 days, you shouldn't be working out today. You should be taking that time and you should be investing that into meal prep and planning. Now, that's within the context of losing weight. All right. If your goal is different, if your goal is health or whatever the case may be, you could probably still make a pretty good argument that diet's pretty important. But at that point, we start to kind of blur the lines a little bit between exercise and diet if your goal is anything other than weight loss. But if your goal is weight loss, you need to know what you're eating for the next 2 days before you put your workout in. All right. Most people that suck at prepping and planning typically don't have their bookends established. They go to bed at different times and they wake up at different times. I cannot explain to you how important it is for you to have some kind of structure and timing around your wake and bedtimes. All right. Every night I am asleep by 10. Sometimes it's 9. Sometimes it's even 8:30. But I'm never up past 10 unless it's like a Saturday night and we're hanging out with friends, which happens maybe a couple times a month. Every morning I'm awake by 6. Sometimes it's 5. Sometimes it's 5:30, but it's always by 6. Set wake and bedtimes are huge for almost everything that applies to your health, fitness, and results. If every day starts and ends different, how do you create consistency to schedule? This is a huge thing we see when people retire. They're on this like really specific pattern. You know, they're waking up, they're going to work, and their entire day is structured. And then they retire, and then all of a sudden they're waking up at 6 a.m. sometimes and 9 a.m. sometimes and going to bed at midnight and going to bed at 8. And their entire day falls apart because every single day is a brand new day, which is a nightmare when we're talking about scheduling, especially when we're talking about prepping and planning. All right. So you have to have set wake time, set bedtime within roughly an hour that you are adhering to every single day in order to make prepping and planning much easier. All right, now that you know your bookends, so roughly what time you're going to wake up every day and roughly what time you're going to go to sleep every day, now you can implement one or more of the strategies below. Now, above everything else is follow the meal plan. People don't see results because they don't follow the plan, all right? So prepping and planning is great, but if you're prepping and planning in a way that is not conducive to you getting results, then you're just kind of wasting your time. So you should be prepping and planning as it relates to the meal plan. 3 servings of protein per day, 2 servings of carbs per day, 3 servings of vegetables per day, 1 serving of fat per day, 2 protein shakes. Okay. All right. Generally speaking, the 3 strategies that we'll implement with somebody when they're having a really hard time with prepping and planning is first meal, easiest meal, hardest meal. First meal is pretty self-explanatory. First meal of the day. Easiest meal, pretty self-explanatory. It's the easiest meal for you to eat that is compliant with how you're supposed to be eating according to the meal plan that we put you on. Third, hardest meal. Sometimes this works for some people. A lot of times it doesn't, but I'm going to go over each strategy because each strategy does work for different people. So first meal is basically just, a lot of times the first meal of the day can sometimes be the easiest meal for you to eat that is compliant. You know, if you don't have to be to work until 9 and you wake up at 6 a.m., man, that's 3 hours where you can get your meal in. And you have plenty of time to be able to get that meal in, right? If you are in that scenario. Now, if you wake up at 6 and you got to be out the door by 7, that might be a lot harder for you to get your first meal in and make it be compliant, okay? So the idea with first meal is basically you want to identify, and really the idea with all these things is identify a meal that is so for instance, first meal is the first meal you eat. The easiest meal might be lunch for some people You're like, man, you know what? Breakfast is a nightmare. I'm running all over the place. I'm getting my kids out the door. I stop at McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts and I get a wake up wrap or something, right? But they're like, lunch, I don't have anybody to worry about. I get an hour for my lunch break. I'm not dealing with kids. I'm not dealing with my spouse, and it is just an hour where I get to spend time with myself. Okay, that's probably the easiest meal for you to focus on. Sometimes focusing on the hardest meal can actually be a great strategy as well. And a lot of times dinner tends to be the hardest meal. Just because if you are, like let's say you have two children, you have a spouse, well, dinner typically everybody wants to eat at the same time. Everybody kind of wants to eat the same thing. And that can sometimes create some nightmares for meal prep and planning, especially if, they want pizza and you're supposed to be eating chicken, rice, and broccoli, right? So you want to pick one of those meals in order to first start prepping and planning, right? So if we look at this as 3 meals per day, which is what we want you guys doing, that's 21 meals per week. Most people don't prep and plan all 21 meals every week. I can't think of anybody that preps and plans every single meal, every single week, every single month. That's just not reasonable. Not only is it not reasonable, it just sounds boring. Okay, it doesn't sound any fun. It just sounds like it sucks. All right. So you want to shoot for 7 meals to start. And you want those 7 meals to either be the 7 first meals that you eat in the day, the 7 easiest meals that you eat, or the 7 hardest meals that you eat. But pick 7. Once you've done that same thing, so once you've said, okay, you know what, breakfast is the first meal that I eat, and it's also the easiest meal for me to make sure that I have prepped and planned. Then what you're going to do is you're going to do that for a couple weeks. Now I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but same thing. A big thing where people screw up their prepping and their planning is they don't make it boring enough. 21 meals in a week. If every single one of those meals is different, that is a nightmare. So like if the breakfast on Monday you never repeat at all for the rest of the week, that's a recipe to have a nightmare for prepping and planning. Because instead of basically you're literally making 21 brand new meals every single week. Nightmare. All right. So what you want to have is you want to have a couple go-to meals that you can do. So go-to meals for me, burger and rice. So just ground beef, sauteed, rice cup. Really easy. Chicken and berries. Really easy. Berries come in containers that most of you should be having for a serving size anyway. Turkey and sweet potatoes. Really easy. Right? So those are very easy meals to prep and plan. Boring pays the bills. The more boring you can be, the better your results are going to be. Okay. I cannot stress that enough, how important it is to be boring. It's the person that makes the chicken noodle soup. It's the person that makes the chili. It's the person that makes the meatloaf. It's the person that makes the pot roast. Those people are very difficult to get results with because it's really hard to quantify the calories in your pot roast. It's really hard to quantify the serving in your chicken noodle soup or the serving in your chili, right? So try and eat the same thing all the time. You can have variations off a theme. So for instance, a big reason why I like burgers, lean beef, for instance, is that it tends to be pretty low on the taste, which means that I can put a lot of different seasonings into it and it just adopts those seasonings really well. Same thing with chicken and same thing with turkey. They tend to be very benign tasting proteins versus something like salmon or steak or something along those lines, right? So you can always change the way that something tastes, but man, as much as possible, just try and eat the same thing all the time. Okay. So, all right, once you've prepped for 2 weeks, where you've said, okay, you know what? I've done breakfast every single day for 2 weeks, prepped and planned. I knew exactly what I was going to have. I had it already, made it out, and I ate it. Once you do that for 2 weeks, then you start looking at a second meal. And okay, you just did breakfast. Maybe you want to go on to lunch. Maybe you want to go on to dinner, whatever the case may be. But just focus on doing one thing for 2 weeks, minimum 2 weeks. Most of you will self-select the amount of calories you should be eating to lose weight, but you need a little bit of guidance for that. And by having one meal prepped and planned, That means that the other 2 meals of the day, you've now made it a lot harder for you to eat, for you to make poor decisions for those other 2 meals. Okay. So most people will see great results with a minimum of 14 out of 21 meals prepped and planned. Your goal is not to prep and plan 21 meals. That shit's bananas. Maybe like a week, maybe like, all right, cool. You're going to Mexico in 6 weeks, or you're going to Mexico 6 weeks from now. And you're like, I want to be rocking that bikini or whatever. Maybe it's a little bit more reasonable for you to plan and prep every single meal for every single week leading up to those 6 weeks. But it's just most people that try and prep and plan 21 meals, they fail. Okay. So don't set your bar too high. 14 out of 21 meals. If you can prep and plan 14 out of 21 meals and the other 7 meals, you're not like a total, like, you're not a total dipshit. You don't sit down and eat like a large pizza and a dozen wings and say, well, that's my meal. Okay. If you can get 14 out of 21 meals that are compliant, they're on point, they follow the meal plan, the other 7 meals, you could probably eat for the most part whatever you want and still see the results that you want, right? I got a couple more slides and then I'll see if there's any questions. All right. So prep strategies. 1 pound of meat takes the same effort as 3 pounds. So when I cook hamburger meat, I always cook a minimum of 2 pounds. It's between 2 to 4 pounds. It really just depends on how I'm feeling for that particular day. So if you're only cooking a pound of meat at once, you need to start cooking more than 1 pound of meat, right? Bulk protein cooking. This is typically where people screw up, is that they don't have their protein cooked ahead of time. And so now they're like, okay, it's lunch, I got to eat. And then they're looking in the refrigerator, or, they're looking around and they end up not eating something that's great. So bulk protein cooking is huge. You should have chicken cooked. You should have steak cooked, or hamburger meat cooked, turkey, any of those things, really. The next thing is that you can buy already prepped foods, berries. For the most part, for a lot of the people that we work with, a container of berries is a pretty good serving size for carbs. So berries, fruit, those things are already in a container. Banana, 1 banana is a great choice for a lot of people for carbs. Okay. Now, a whole cantaloupe, even though a whole cantaloupe is a piece of fruit, all right, don't eat a whole cantaloupe at once. Same thing with a watermelon, same thing with pineapple. Okay, don't eat a whole pineapple at once. But berries, fruit, rice cups. I'm a big fan of rice cups. I like the ones, they're called minute rice. I like the jasmine rice. A minute in the microwave, bam, ready to go. Okay, so look for already prepared foods. At the end of the day, you're either going to sacrifice your time and save money to reach a goal, or you're going to sacrifice money and save time to reach the goal. That's it. So either spend money or spend time, right? In the grand scheme of things, I would much rather you spend money, because we can always make more money, but we can never make more time. So if you're having a hard time on meal prepping and planning because you just really don't have a lot of time, then you need to look at things that are going to save you time. So for instance, buying protein that's already cooked, buying fruit that's in season right now, and they're already in those nice, easy to consume containers, buying rice cups, you get the idea. All right. If you have to eat out, or you're going to the grocery store, like, so for instance, I used to work at a gym that was right in back of a grocery store. And I knew, all right, at 1 o'clock, I'm going to have an hour off because I'm going to see somebody at noon. And I just got done seeing somebody at 2. I switch those around, but you get the idea. I would walk to the grocery store. I'd go to the frozen food section, and I would look for something that's frozen because I had access to a microwave, and I would just get that at the grocery store, take it to the microwave, and eat it in the gym. All right. So a good rule of thumb, 400 to 700 calories per meal. So you can go to the frozen food section and find something that's 400 to 700 calories per meal. Today I had a protein bar. I had these little bars that Cup of Golds. Okay. The protein bar is 180 calories. The Cup of Gold is 180 calories. My protein shake is 200 calories. That gives me about 560 calories, right? So you're looking for 400 to 700 calories per meal. The lower your body weight, so the closer you are to 150 pounds or lower, you're going to be more on the 400 calorie end. The closer you are or over 225, 250 pounds, you're going to be more towards the 700 calorie end. That holds true for basically every single meal that you're going to eat. If you're 200 pounds and you had 400 calories per meal, that would be a little bit low, but you're going to see great weight loss results. All right. 24 to 48 hours. I like people to know what they're going to be eating 24 to 48 hours out. So let's see. Today it's Thursday at basically 11:30. You guys should all know what you're going to be eating for the next 24 hours. So from today, Thursday, 11:30 to Friday, 11:30. And then you should know Friday to Saturday what you're going to be eating over that period of time, right? So I like 24 to 40 hours. Now, some people will do weekly. I have done weekly in the past. Jamie and I both done weekly in the past. Weekly is really tough, especially if you have a hang up with eating leftovers. I do not have a hang up with eating pretty much anything. I will eat everything. You put it in front of me, it's going in my mouth. All right. Now, some people, Jamie, for instance, she doesn't like leftovers. That's totally fine. So for her to cook something on Sunday and have that still be appetizing on Thursday, for her, doesn't work. Right. So she doesn't do weekly meal prep or weekly planning. Okay. And I will say that weekly prepping and weekly planning is really good for certain types of people. But if you have kids, if you have a spouse, weekly prepping and planning is tough, very difficult. Typically, single people tend to do really good with weekly prepping and planning, or people that are okay eating leftovers. All right, morning of. I have also used all of these strategies for myself, and we have basically every member doing at least one of these strategies, if not a combination of all of them. So morning of, this is basically, you wake up at 6 a.m. You got to be out the door by 8 p.m. Or yeah, 8 p.m. You got to be out the door by 8 a.m. You take 30 minutes to prep and plan all the foods that you're going to be eating for that day. So the morning of, you make sure you give yourself some time to make sure you know what you're going to be eating that day and what time. Very important, those two things. What you're eating, but no idea when you're going to eat it, means that you probably will not eat what you're supposed to be eating. So you have to have a time. Okay, I'm going to eat my first meal around 11. I'm going to eat my second meal around 3, whatever. I'm making that up. Okay. But you have to have a time of when you think you're going to be eating, roughly an hour-ish. And then you have to know what you're going to be eating. Okay. So that's morning up. Night before. I'm a big fan of night before. Same idea with morning of. You take 30 minutes the night before and you say, okay, cool. What am I going to be eating the next day? And then you prep and plan it out. I really like to do that. I just find that in the evening, it's just a little bit easier for me to do that personally rather than the morning of. Morning of for me is really great if I know. So for instance, when we were in the big gym, I would leave the house at about 6 a.m. I'd get to the gym around 6:30, and then I would start my day at about 7 a.m. And then I would be in the big gym until 7 p.m. So 12 hours. And when I had days like that, what I would do is I would cook all my food for the day the morning of. So I have all my food in a big Tupperware container, and I would just pick at that Tupperware container throughout the day. Okay. So that's a strategy where basically all of your food goes into a Tupperware. And again, for me, I will eat anything. All right. So some of you aren't going to be like me, but I would put all my food into this big Tupperware container to weigh like 5 pounds. And then I would just be picking at that throughout the day as my day would go on, because I would literally be working from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. with like 30 minutes here and 15 minutes here and an hour here where I could pick away at that food. Okay. If it's Thursday night and you don't know what time you will eat tomorrow, you will have a hard time figuring out what you will eat tomorrow. That should make sense. All right. If you don't know what time, like if it's Thursday night and you're like, geez, I have no idea what I'm going to be eating Friday, then you don't know what you're going to be eating Friday. In which case you have a huge problem with prepping and planning, right? If it's Friday morning and you don't know what you're going to eat on that day, you're probably screwed. You have to have an idea of what you're going to be eating on a particular day. You know, the crazy thing is if we were to take away all of our industrial lifestyle, so no more houses, no more jobs, no more car payments, we're living out in the woods, no more grocery stores. Your life would revolve around basically 3 things: food and water, safety, shelter. That's it. You would literally wake up every single day and you'd be like, okay, where am I going to get my food and water from? But the fact that we have grocery stores and the fact that we have convenience stores, like we're bombarded. It's called an obesogenic environment. We are in an obesogenic environment. We're in an environment that is designed to make us obese. You should have no problem prepping and planning your meals. Okay. You have access to food all the time. You should know exactly what you're going to eat, when you're going to eat it. And if you don't, that's what's going to lead you to Subway to get the 1,200 calorie sub because you're hungry. That's what's going to get you to 3 slices of pizza because you're hungry. Okay. So you have to prep and plan in order to prevent that. All right, last slide. Alternatives. So eat out. Remember, you're either going to spend money or you're going to spend time. Okay. If you're somebody whose time is worth $100 an hour and you're taking an hour and you're prepping and planning your meals, I would tell you that you're wasting your time and money because you could find an alternative that's probably only going to cost you $10 or $15 instead of losing an hour $100. So know what your time is worth. I like to have all of my meals prepped and planned by somebody else because I got shit to do. So that's why I like Factor meals. That's why I like Just Meat. That's why I will get Applebee's, or I'll get Moe's, or I'll get something along those lines because they give me calories. Because for me to take 20 or 30 minutes to prep and plan my foods when I can just pay $20 to have it done, that's a much better utilization of my time, right? So eat out. You're looking for 500, 700 calories per meal, okay? Done for you meals. I have always used some form of done for you meals for probably the last 8 years. Makes my life easy, okay? In the summer months, I use Just Meat because I eat a lot of fruit and protein. In the warmer months, or in the
You're on mute.
now can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up. Everybody hear me? Good. So done for you meals, Factor or Just Meals or Just Meats. Factor is great because it's full meals with calories. That's what I do in the winter. I do Just Meats in the summer. These are great because it's just meat. It's just seasoned meat. It's cooked meat. That tends to be a big problem where people have for prepping and planning is they don't have that protein cooked ahead of time. So this is already cooked. It's cooked sous vide, which basically just means it's a really moist way of cooking. It ends up creating pretty moist meat, and they already flavor it. They already season it. It tastes amazing. We have discount codes for both of those. So we have codes that will get you guys some extra stuff that they don't advertise because we are affiliated with them. You can hire a chef. I have done this in the past. Incredibly expensive because you're paying for the time to cook the stuff, and you're also paying for the time for somebody to go out and buy the food for you, and then you're also obviously paying for the food. So I used to cook meals for people, but it is very expensive. There are private chefs in the area that will do this for you. It's expensive, but they taste really, really good. And if you're going to go this route, you basically just want to tell that person, hey, I want 7 breakfasts that are all the same breakfast. Or I want 7 lunches, all the same lunch, 7 dinners, all the same dinners. Here's how I want them to look. Here's the ingredients. And then they'll make an amazing meal for you that you stick in the microwave. One of the best things that I like about these done for you meals, like, so for instance, the Factor, it's 3.5 minutes in the microwave. It's approximately 4 minutes to cool down. And then it takes me about 10 minutes to eat. 20 minutes. My whole meal is done. Okay. The Just Meats is really nice because it's basically the same thing. It takes me about 5 minutes to heat up in a saute pan. I like a little bit of texture on the meat. And then it's minutes for my rice cup. So it's literally like 4 to 8 minutes to cook it and let it cool down before I eat it. Right. And then finally, you can always make more money, but you can never make more time. And that is really just getting you guys to think about if the big problem that you're having with prepping and planning is time. Okay, if that's the problem, we all have 24 hours in a day. So you either have to shuffle some things around in order to give yourself a little bit more time to prep and plan, or You accept the fact that, you know what, your life is really busy. You got a lot of stuff going on. Your time is very limited. So that means that you need to look at other alternatives like the Factor or the Just Meat or, you know, whatever the case may be. You need to look at other alternatives in order to save yourself time, but it's going to cost you a little bit more money. Okay. All right. That's my preso. Let me see if I have any questions here. Glitchy. Sorry, gang. Sorry for the glitchiness. Hopefully that's fixed now. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Guys, and these can be any questions. It can be prep questions. This can be does not have to be related to the topic at hand. These could be any questions. And I got about 10 minutes. Holly, did I see you raise your hand? What do you got, Holly?
Yeah, in the very, very beginning, you like quickly went through how many things in a day, and all I got was like 3 proteins, 3 something.
Okay. So think of the meal plan as you can look at it as two different ways. You can look at it as those pie charts, right?
Yeah.
Like pie chart breakfast, pie chart lunch, pie chart dinner,
Yeah.
or 3 servings of protein every day,
Yep.
2 servings of carbs every day, 3 servings of veggies every day, 1 serving of fat, and 2 protein shakes if that's on your plan.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
the other way that you can look at it. And that's what I would do. Like if I know I'm going to be busy for 12 hours, like if I know it's like, man, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., I'm out. I don't have any time to like prep or plan. I barely have time to eat. I literally just take all of my food and I put it into a gigantic Tupperware container and I just pick away at it. So I take my 3 servings of protein, 2 servings carbs, 1 serving fat, 3 servings of vegetables. I saute it all up and I put it into a pan or I put it into a Tupperware container and I just pick away at it throughout the day. Not ideal, but it will get you through a day where it's really busy. Shade, I see you have a question. No, good. Anybody got any other questions? Cool. Let me just check. And make sure nobody wrote any questions in. All right, got it. Cool. Okay, gang, was this helpful? Give me a thumbs up if it was helpful. Thumbs up, good. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping the recording will be helpful because I could barely hear with the glitchiness. So,
Okay.
like,
I appreciate that feedback too, just because it'll let me know to make sure I'm on the correct. We have a bunch of different Wi-Fi's at the house, and so
yeah, it was very, very glitchy. So,
very glitchy. Okay.
but like,
I'm gonna
yes,
go.
barely hear.
Oh man, that sucks. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna check it out, and if it's really bad, then I might just do another one next week. So we'll see how it looks. Okay, gang, I gotta run. We're gonna do this again next week. If you guys have any things that you want me to talk about, shoot me a message. Okay, shoot a message in the app. Like, hey, I'd really like for you to talk about fish oil. I don't know. I just made that up because somebody asked me a question about it earlier today. Or I really want you to talk about ankle mobility. Whatever. Let me know. Okay, let me know what you want me to talk about. And then we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys in the gym. You guys all have a great day. Thank you so much for zooming in, and you guys will get the recording, and I'll talk to all of you later. Thanks, gang.
Thank you.